Hello, I'm Adam Kielich, the principal attorney at the Kielich Law Firm in Bedford, Texas, where I help people with their employment law, family law, and consumer law needs. Today's video is going to discuss options available to you if you're unable to get criminal records off of your background through either an expunction or a non-disclosure order in Texas. In other videos and as well as posts of information on my website, I've discussed some of the ways that you become eligible for an expunction order that will erase criminal records from your background, or a non-disclosure order that will seal those records from most employers from their background checks. So I won't burden this video by making it terribly long by going back over that information, and if that's what you're looking for, I would encourage you to look at the other videos as well as the blog post on my website. But suffice to say, sometimes your records are just not able to be erased or sealed through one of these mechanisms, and you've got to deal with the consequences of those records continuing to be on your background when an employer goes in and conducts a check. The same can be true with negative financial records that show up, such as late payments, car repossessions, bankruptcies, unpaid rent or mortgages, including foreclosures. Some of this stuff will just stay on your records, and it's not easy to get them wiped off, and future employers or prospective employers may see those. So if you're not able to get it off, there are a few options as far as what you can do, not unfortunately to get them removed from your record, but to work around those negative marks on your background and try to build confidence in a prospective employer that they should hire you and give you a chance in spite of those bad things in your history. What people commonly want to do is just not disclose the criminal records that are on their background and gamble with the chance that that prospective employer won't conduct a background check, and so maybe those records are never found. And if you're looking at an entry-level position in a job that doesn't deal with finances or sensitive information, there is always that chance that an employer says that they conduct background checks and maybe they won't. But an increasing number of employers are conducting background checks. And the biggest problem is an employer may not conduct a background check before they hire you. They may conduct that background check a few months into your employment as they get around to it. And if they find information that they don't like, and particularly if they find information they don't like that you lied about, they certainly have grounds to terminate you at a minimum because you've lied to them, and that dishonesty is a legitimate ground for termination, even if for some reason the employer maybe would not have or could not have terminated you for the criminal records that they found in the background check. That dishonesty is an independent reason why they can terminate you. And sometimes an employer won't conduct a background check even when they first hire somebody, but as you move up the ladder, you may come into a position where, for whatever reason, they do want to or need to conduct a background check. If they find something in your history and go back and look at your application and you've said, no, I don't have any criminal records, they can go back and still terminate you years down the road for finding out that you've been dishonest with them. And again, that would be a legitimate purpose for that, or a legitimate reason for them to terminate you. That could be particularly problematic because it can take a perfectly good career and flush it down the toilet. Or if you've been fired after a month or two because you lied about a record that was on your history, that can create problems because now you've got to explain to a subsequent employer that you're applying to why you were only employed for 2 months or a month or whatever, and this employer has marked you as ineligible for rehire. That can create more problems and snowball this problem of something in your past rather than make the situation better. But on the other side, of course, maybe that dishonesty pays off for you and the employer never conducts the background check, and your criminal records in the past become irrelevant. But it's generally not my advice that you should gamble that the employer won't conduct the background check or won't find whatever's in your criminal background. So there are some suggestions as far as what I do suggest doing in most cases. And of course, it's worth pointing out as well that not every situation is going to be the same, and there may be reasons why some of these recommendations may not fit specifically every situation or every job that you apply for. These are really just general ideas for you to consider. And if you want more specific advice, you need to talk to an attorney who can walk you through the specifics of your situation and what you should do given those specifics. But generally, some ideas to consider. First of all, come up with an honest but more favorable explanation for the existence of that criminal record. Employers generally are not going to look poorly upon you for being honest about answering the question, although they may not like the information that you're disclosing. At very least, you're not giving them a reason to turn you down for the job or fire you for dishonesty because you have acknowledged that these things exist in your past. But by doing so, you also give yourself an opportunity to explain why what happened was a unique, unfortunate event, or maybe you made some bad decisions when you were younger and you've matured and grown out of that, or it was something stupid that you can't believe you did, and you've done all these other things in your life that show that this was an isolated, stupid decision, and normally you make smart decisions and act within the law and so forth. So I think it's important that if you have that opportunity to build in the explanation for it and distinguish your current identity from whatever it was in the past that led to this criminal record, that could be useful to show the employer that you acknowledge that something happened in your past and you've moved on, you've made amends for it, and you're trying to move on with your life. They're going to be more willing in general to give you that chance, showing that they're not taking somebody on who did something maybe bad and doesn't see a problem with it. Getting ahead of it can be helpful in a lot of situations. Additionally, you can apply for jobs that don't conduct a background check or do a minimal background check. I said increasingly, employers are conducting background checks, but not all background checks are the same. Some of the services out there that employers use for background checks are very thorough. They've got a considerable amount of criminal records, or they'll send somebody to go pull records and see what shows up for you. But some of the background check services have very little information, and often it's very hard to distinguish whether the information is even correct. I know personally for myself, I don't have criminal records to deal with, but I do conduct background checks for various purposes on people, and I have run them on myself and seen information for other people who aren't me show up on these results. Not that they were criminal, but just different names and addresses that weren't me. So that information is not always trustworthy, and there is a chance that the less focus an employer spends on that background check, the less money maybe they're spending to have those checks performed, the more likely it is that distant records in your past or more minimal criminal records may not show up for various reasons. So applying for those jobs where you know the employer does not conduct a background check, or their background checks are known to be very minimal or specific to the kind of work that your job is going to perform may give you an opportunity to move forward with a job even though you have those criminal records still in your background. Additionally, if you are locked out of just a ton of jobs because you have criminal records, and that often is the case if you have a lot of or some serious recent records, if you are on or maybe just completed probation, that's usually going to show up in a background check, or recent jail time, or some sort of recent conviction for a felony or a serious misdemeanor. Is probably going to be pretty harmful to your job search. So look at industries where background checks are regularly not performed, or in jobs where the employer gets an incentive for hiring somebody who has a recent criminal record. A very common industry where this occurs is in restaurants. Restaurants, unless they're very high-end restaurants, tend not to conduct background checks, and many will actually take advantage of programs that give them incentives to hire people who are recently released from prison or parole programs, or otherwise have serious criminal records. And these jobs aren't great. They're not going to pay a ton of money, but it is a starting point in which you can build a resume. And to be perfectly honest, there are jobs as chefs and bartenders and even waiters at nice restaurants that pull in very, very decent pay. So it's not as though you're stuck with low-paying jobs for the rest of your life. There is a career ladder out there. You just need to get on the right ladder for the criminal records that you have. And last, something else you can do is do volunteer work. And of course, if you're looking for a job, you want to look for a job that's going to pay you a salary. That's obviously the goal here, but volunteer work can be very critical, especially if you're trying to move into a white-collar position where you might be working with sensitive information or money or financial records. And that's because with the volunteer work, a lot of organizations are not going to conduct background checks. They're eager to take on the free work, and unless you look sketchy or the job requires access to sensitive information, they'll take you on. They may start you out with something very minor, but as you continue to volunteer, your opportunities usually will expand. And this is kind of the same idea with the restaurant job, that it's going to give you a starting point where you have somebody who took you on, gave you an opportunity to do the work. You did the work. Even if you weren't paid for it, you still did the work. You showed that you were capable of handling the work, that you were able to handle the responsibility. You were responsible in doing the work. Additionally, it's going to help you build your resume in a very positive manner. It's also going to give you referrals that you can use when you go into jobs to show, like, hey, here are people at this charity or this church or whatever the organization is, who can vouch for me, who can talk about my work in spite of these things that happened in my past. And that can further reinforce that idea that that explanation that you've moved on from whatever the criminal records were to the person you are today, and show that you're trying to make a positive change, not just for yourself, but for your community as a whole by doing that volunteer work. And there are so many organizations that are looking for volunteer work that can accept that volunteer work, that you can find work doing all sorts of different kinds of jobs and really get your foot in the door to an industry. And again, of course, the not being paid for it is a problem, but maybe you pair together working in a restaurant or some other industry where the background checks don't really exist, along with volunteer work that might be more suited to a career path that you want to get onto. And the combination of that work together can help you build a resume and distinguish yourself from whatever unfortunate events are in your past, and help you move on even if you're stuck with those records where they are. So those are some ideas to consider. They're not revolutionary ideas by any extent, but they are a good starting point in many situations, to try to get your life back on track, try to get your jobs squared away so that you can get a job or get a promotion, whatever it is that you're looking for. But if you do have some criminal records, I would recommend as well talking to an attorney who works on expunctions and non-disclosure orders to see if you are eligible or what options might be available to you. As I said, not everybody is going to be eligible, and if you have convictions or you accepted probation, which at some point a conviction was entered, generally those are not eligible for an expunction or a non-disclosure, but check with an attorney who can actually pull the criminal file from the court, see what actually took place and whether you're eligible. And if not, they can also talk to you about some opportunities, ways to explain that history to a prospective employer and try to help you put your best foot forward in your job search. But that's pretty much it for this video. I hope those ideas are helpful. As I said, if you're looking for more information about the expunctions or non-disclosure, there's some other videos that I have out here and some more information on my website that you're welcome to look at. And that's basically it. So as usual, I want to thank you for listening. Good luck in your job search or your search for a promotion, and I'll see you next video.